Hi there, I'm Jim Zirin. Welcome back to Conversations in the Digital Age. The United States Senate, as we all know, is presently controlled by the Democrats, who hold 55 seats, with 45 seats being held by the Republicans. We are on the brink of a midterm election in which 36 seats are in contention. The Republicans must pick up a net gain of 6 seats if they are going to control the upper chamber. Will they do it? What does it all mean? We have someone with us who has the answer. He is Doug Schoen, a veteran political analyst, whom we're delighted to welcome back to the program. And before we start the conversation, I must note that Doug is the author of a blockbuster book entitled The Russia-China Axis, The New Cold War and America's Crisis of Leadership. Doug, welcome back.
Jim, thank you for having me again.
Well, that's very nice. Now, the smart money says, from everything I've read, that it comes down to about 8 toss-up states. Would you agree with that?
I would. Let me give you, if I can, a quick analysis. I think most people agree that there are 3 seats the Republicans will pick up: West Virginia, Montana, South Dakota. Now, there's some sense that South Dakota could be close because of the presence of an independent, Larry Pressler, but I think most people now, and the polls certainly agree, that those 3 will go Republican. There are another 5 or 6 seats that are, I think, up for grabs, with the Republicans with an advantage in at least 5 of them. Let me go through them. You have Arkansas and Alaska. Again, Republicans with consistent leads. And in fact, in the case of Arkansas, growing leads. You have Louisiana, which probably, Jim, will not be decided until December, where the Republican Cassidy has got a slight lead in the ultimate runoff with incumbent Senator Mary Landrieu. So
there'll have to be a runoff election in Louisiana.
Right, and so we won't know on election night, but that would be an additional 3 seats there. You have also Iowa, where Joni Ernst has had a consistent but very small lead within the margin of error against Democratic Congressman Bruce Braley. And finally, in Colorado, Congressman Cory Gardner is holding, again, a modest lead, 3-4 points over incumbent Mark Udall. So there are, I think, 5 seats there, plus the original 3, that's 8. But there are a lot of buts that go along with that. First, there's another potential pickup in North Carolina, where Tom Tillis is contesting the seat currently held by Kay Hagan. So that would be another possible pickup. But then we get down to the buts, and the buts are manifold. You go to Georgia, a Republican seat. David Perdue is in a very close race with the daughter of former Senator Sam Nunn, Michelle Nunn. That could be a pickup for the Democrats. I said could be, not definitely, but possible. The race is now almost a statistical tie. You go to Kentucky, where the smart money is on Mitch McConnell, but
Minority leader.
The minority leader of the Senate, but he's got bad numbers, and the only one with worse numbers than him in Kentucky is the president, who I think gives him something of a lifeline. Then you go out to Kansas, where you have Pat Roberts in a very red state, in trouble, being really now in a pure tie with Greg Orman, an independent businessman in a state where the Democrat has dropped out.
I don't think a Democrat has ever won the United States Senate in Kansas.
I don't think since the 20s or 30s that has happened.
Now, the Republicans claim in Kansas this independent candidacy of Orman is just a put-up job. They had a Democratic candidate who was pretty well qualified, and then they decided he should withdraw.
Which he did.
And there was a lawsuit as to whether he could withdraw.
That's right.
And they won the lawsuit.
That's true.
Enter Orman, and now Orman is giving the incumbent a run for his money.
A real run for his money. It's a statistical tie. Orman is somebody who voted for Obama in 2008, for Romney in 2012. He said he won't decide who he'll caucus with until after the election. So I think he's a bona fide independent, but the bulk of the positions he's taken certainly are more liberal than anything else.
Now, what about New Hampshire? Does that figure?
I had forgotten New Hampshire, and thank you for reminding me.
Can't forget New Hampshire, Doug.
You can't. And certainly in 2016, no one will forget New Hampshire. But for the purposes of today, Jeanne Shaheen has a 3 or 4 point lead over former Massachusetts Senator Scott Brown. I would again suggest that it's likely Shaheen will be reelected. There's a but, and I think the but applies to all of the 9 or 10, maybe even 11 races we spoke of. And that is there could be a Republican tide, a Republican wave. And in that situation, the advantage the Republicans now enjoy in the generic vote could well translate into something akin to an across-the-board sweep. Now, since I am only invited here, Jim, I know, because I've given accurate predictions.
Haven't failed me once.
And I don't intend to today. So your question was, first, will the Republicans win the Senate? My answer...
Well, that's my last question,
well,
but I don't mind if you answer it.
All right, I'll answer it now, but it's an unabashed yes. I think they will. And as to the number of seats, I think it'll be 6 or 7 seats. I think there'll be a couple of surprises, but I think they'll take 6 or 7 seats. And I'm willing to bet, Jim, something that is very near and dear to me, my invitation for 2016 on the credibility of that prediction.
Oh, well, do you have a prediction now for 2016 who the nominees will be?
Yeah, Mitt Romney and Hillary Clinton.
Mitt Romney and Hillary Clinton. And who wins that one?
Too close to call. I guess if I had to bet, I'd bet on Hillary, but you know what? I'm not willing to put my franchise on the line for that one.
So you're not a fan of inevitability?
Well, if inevitability worked, I would have had a much less successful career as a political consultant. I've taken advantage of the unexpected.
Well, let's stay with the midterm elections, if we can, rather than gazing this far into the stars. We have a lot of these candidates dancing around the issues in ways that are absolutely remarkable. You have, in Colorado, for example, where there's a high Hispanic vote, the Republican candidate, and I think Pressler as well, is saying, well, we ought to have immigration reform.
Right.
While in other states, such as New Hampshire, which does not share a border with Mexico, and I think in Louisiana as well, they're taking the hard line that we ought to round up all the illegals and not grant them amnesty and throw them out of the United States. So you have candidates in a party taking totally inconsistent positions.
Correct. Now, most Republicans, most places say, tighten the border or border security first. But somebody like Cory Gardner, who wants to get somewhere around a third or more of the Hispanic vote, recognizes that if he came out flat out against immigration reform, it could cost him the Senate.
Particularly where there's a high concentration of Hispanic voters. But in New Hampshire, there are very few.
Right, and in New Hampshire, the issue is that people tend to be very conservative. It's an economy that has been, I think, battered. There is always the question of people from Canada or foreign nations coming to New Hampshire. And the motto of the state may well be live free or die. But rest assured, it doesn't say anything about who can work.
Well, maybe live Democrat or die.
Well, that may be Jeanne Shaheen's.
That may be Jeanne Shaheen's motto. Let's talk about the race card for a moment, if we can. There's been reported in the press that the Democrats have made a concerted effort, including Bill Clinton, to get out the black vote in a number of these toss-up states. The blacks voted in great numbers when Obama was running 2 years ago, and were responsible for carrying a number of these states. Are they going to come out, and are they going to vote Democratic?
You know, that is the big question. I mean, historical evidence would suggest they aren't, though the Republicans were banking their hopes in 2012 on the proposition that they wouldn't come out again for Obama. Of course they did. I would bet, Jim, that there would be a somewhat reduced turnout. Certainly the polls have suggested that now. But the amount of money and energy that is and will be spent can't be underestimated. And again, in very close elections, 2-3 points, a turnout of 1 or 2 additional African Americans or Hispanics per precinct could make a difference in the ultimate outcome for the Democrats.
So this is the classic Doug Schoen strategy. You find out who supports you, and you make sure they're there in the polls on election day.
That is absolutely right, and you do whatever you can to get them to the polls.
This is like old Brooklyn politics. You canvass an apartment building, and you get them out there to the polls,
and you,
one way or another.
And you call them, you beg them, you beseech them. Maybe you offer them lunch, but you make sure they get there.
And in Chicago, you get them out even if they're dead.
Well, that's exactly true. But I don't know if you saw the Post today, the New York Post. We're talking about that there are about some 1,000 voters on the rolls who apparently are 164 years old.
Well, that's a very
they've been voting regularly.
Very interesting factoid. They vote early and often.
Exactly.
Now, let's talk for a minute about Colorado. It seems to be a one-issue race between Udall and Gardner, because Gardner has a background of supporting legislation in favor of personhood, which is a euphemism for a right to life,
right,
anti-abortion. Udall is vehemently in favor of abortion, and so much so he's been called by the Republican Senator Uterus.
That is true.
Now, will the race really turn on this one issue?
You know, I don't think it will. I think every poll that I've seen suggests that the disaffection with the Democrats, the weakening of the economy, and the desire for change is far more important than social issues like abortion or gay marriage.
Isn't there an overarching issue in all these Senate campaigns? Just one issue, and that is President Obama.
There's one issue of President Obama, and the larger question that his job performance raises is one of fear and uncertainty in an electorate.
He has an approval rating of about 44% now, and it's probably descending as we talk.
I think that's right. I have said, Jim, that there are 4 people who are primarily responsible for focusing the interests of the American people in the election. And very tragically, and I really do underscore tragically, 2 are the, I guess, journalists and aid workers who were beheaded by ISIS. That certainly has captivated the attention of the American people in a way that can't be overestimated, and even probably with greater political significance.
Do you think he's concentrated too much on ISIS?
Let me just finish my point, and then I'll answer. And the second big issue is Ebola. And with 2 people having gotten Ebola, I think that has also focused the American people. And I think what they think, to turn to the question you started to ask before I interrupted, I think that there's a sense from the American people that he hasn't concentrated enough on offering leadership and solutions, that he's sort of played politics with everything. And I have a sense that people have doubts about his competence and doubts even about his integrity.
Well, there's some other issues as well. There's Obamacare, which appears to have been a great success, but it's sort of a bad, dirty word. It has a bad reputation. It's associated with him. No one quite knows why it has a bad reputation, but the immediate association with Obamacare is it's bad.
Well,
people who've never read the statute don't know what it is.
Well, Jim, if you've read the statute, you're a better man than me.
Well, Nancy Pelosi didn't read the statute.
That is true.
And then you have other issues. You had the Secret Service. You had the IRS. You had the IRS. There seems to be a feeling that the government is incompetent and a feeling that no one has confidence in the government.
I think that's exactly right. And I think that explains why states like Colorado are tilting, and I emphasize tilting, in the direction of the Republicans.
Let's talk for a moment on foreign policy.
Sure.
Suppose, as you predict, the Republicans win the Senate, so they control both houses. Doesn't this force Obama necessarily into a position where he becomes a foreign policy president for the last 2 years? Because that's the only area where we can hope to have congressional support.
Well, I think there are 2 things, Jim. First, there's foreign policy, which I think is thrust upon him regardless of his own inclination. But the second thing, which I think is something we alluded to, but is the way I believe he may well govern, if in fact he faces a Republican Senate and a Republican House, as is, I suggest now likely, is he could well govern by executive order. And I think that there's the possibility indeed of and I'm probably overstating it, but a constitutional crisis if in fact he does a pathway to citizenship for the 11 million illegal immigrants, or in some way grants what the Republicans will call amnesty, green cards, as you put it, in large numbers to those who've come here, and whatever they did to get here are now leading productive lives.
But, I mean, he won't say he's doing this, but don't you think essentially his only course is to abandon his domestic agenda and then focus on foreign policy?
Well, I would say yes, if he's not prepared to compromise. It isn't clear to me the Republicans are as intransigent as they appear to be. On the other hand, there's no evidence, to be fair to him, that the Republicans have, with open arms, welcomed him to their political bosom to try to effect some sort of compromise.
Well, if they control both houses of Congress, they're not going to be looking to make deals.
Well,
they're going
if they want to pass laws, they have to, because he will exercise his right to veto.
Yes. Well, why do they need to pass laws as long as they obstruct what Obama's trying to do?
Because when you go to an election and all you've done is obstruct, as your hypothesis would suggest for the Republicans, you tend to earn the very low ratings that the Republicans have as a party now.
Let's return to foreign policy because Obama said he wanted to pivot toward the Asia-Pacific region. Now, pivot is kind of a bad word because it implies giving up one interest for another. And the interest, of course, that he's giving up was the Middle East.
Right.
And he seemed to be content with a kind of non-involvement in the Middle East and a weak pivot toward Asia, because you can't really point to very much that he's done except to say rhetorically that he's pivoting. And then ISIS arose, or Syria arose. He drew a red line in Syria. Assad crossed the red line. He did nothing about that except punt to Congress. And then ISIS arose, and without anyone really knowing where it came from, he said it was a cancer, and like cancer, no one knows exactly where it comes from. And he now has become obsessed with ISIS, I think because of the beheadings. Do you think it was just a ploy to get us involved in the Middle East?
I think he doesn't want to get involved in the Middle East. I think his statements and his behavior suggest that. I think events on the ground are impelling him to get involved. And I think the new red line he set is no boots on the ground. He said that repeatedly. But I think there's a better than 50% chance that when we talk in 2 years, there will, in fact, be some number of Americans, however limited, serving with the Iraqi army and perhaps the Syrian opposition.
Well, first place, we do have boots on the ground, even as we speak, because we have special ops in Iraq, possibly in Syria. We have CIA in Iraq, possibly and probably in Syria. I mean, how do we lend support to the Kurds or anyone else?
Of course. And for those approximately 2,000 American men and women, if we add another 5,000 or 10,000, which is what a lot of people like Lindsey Graham and John McCain are advocating, we will have another full-scale war on our hands.
Do you think our foreign policy under Obama has been feckless, as John McCain suggests?
Pretty much. I mean, it has not been a great success. Leading from behind has not worked particularly well. And the Arabs
certainly hasn't been leading from in front. So.
No, he hasn't. And the Arab Spring, again, has not necessarily redounded to our benefit. So
even Tunisia, where we had the greatest hope of democracy, and which really seemed to be on the proper course, that seems to be a fertile ground for ISIS recruitment.
Yeah, the most ISIS recruits in the region have come from Tunisia. So, you know, it's all a very murky and, I dare say, problematic situation.
Can we just switch the subject to the fundraising tactics of your friends, the Democrats, with these hysterical emails that have gone out with subject lines that are over the top? Nancy Pelosi sends an email to Democrats saying the subject line is feeling of regret. She says, "We will fail to hit our goal. We've tried everything. President Obama has emailed you. President Clinton has emailed you. I've done emails more than I can count. A Democratic congressional committee sends out something, we've got nothing yet, meaning the target hasn't paid any money. We're out of people to email you. You should have received an email from 2 U.S. presidents. I mean, another subject line was accept defeat. So, I mean, do you think do you think this is all going to backfire? I mean, it seems
it's
absurd.
all about raising money. Their attitude, as that email suggests, is whatever it takes to pry open your wallet will do. And so we've tried. We haven't heard from you. Now pry open your wallet.
Pry open your wallet. And then, of course, they have to invoke the names of those two evil characters, Karl Rove and, I guess, three, and the Koch brothers. And so if you see that Karl Rove and the Koch brothers are giving money to Republican candidates, you've got to give money to the Democrats.
That's exactly right. And so often our politics has now become less a fight between parties or candidates, but between super PACs. Tom Steyer on the Democratic side and the Koch brothers on the other side, for example.
Oh, well, let's not forget Professor Lessig at the Harvard Law School, who has a PAC and gave $1 million, I think, in
North Carolina.
In North Carolina.
Well, you know what I think is going on? You have mega donors who are so engaged, and McCain-Feingold blocked unlimited contributions to political parties. So the money finds a home, and under the, I think, forerunner or the successor decision to Citizens United, there is now an absolute prohibition on limitations of gifts to super PACs. So you're seeing very large sums go to PACs on behalf of individuals, frequently, who have specific agendas.
And the Democrats even introduced a bill in Congress for constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United.
Absolutely.
Which allows free contributions to auxiliary organizations. And of course, it didn't pass. We all know, you as a graduate of Harvard Law School know you don't tinker with the Constitution. So even responsible Democrats voted against it.
Well, that's the issue. But it becomes good politics and good theater, and hence why it was done.
That's why it was done.
Yes.
So where are we going with all this? We seem to be in a dysfunctional muddle.
We are. We're in a dysfunctional muddle that I think, Jim, is going to get worse. You and I have spoken now, I think it's been over 6 years, if memory serves me, but each year the tone of our conversation gets a little bit more pessimistic. Today, I think I'm more pessimistic.
Well, maybe we're wiser.
Well, I think in one case, yours, we are, and those who have not read Jim's award-winning and best-selling book, I urge you to go and read it.
Has nothing to do with this election.
It doesn't, but it has to do with our democratic system and efforts to subvert it in many instances. Read the chapter on, I guess, the Roy Cohn and his ilk, and you'll get a sense. But
well, you're very kind.
But to go beyond this and just try to put a fine point on this, if there is a Republican win in the Senate, as I'm predicting, it will not be an affirmative vote for the Republicans. It'll be a rejection of the Democrats. It's important to recognize that neither party has an agenda going forward.
All right, so Doug Schoen, I have a question for you.
Yes.
I told you I'd ask you this question
You
at
did.
the end. Will the Republicans take the United States Senate in the midterm election?
They will, with a 7-seat pickup. You've heard it here first.
7-seat pickup.
Yep.
Well, I'll be watching on election night to see whether that's true. And if it is true,
I get that email from you that says, told you so. Or you told me so.
You told me so, and please save the time for 2 years from now when we can really get down to brass tacks.
We will.
Doug Schoen, thank you so
Jim,
much
thank
for coming
you.
by.
My pleasure.
It's always a great deal of fun, and
I enjoyed
it's
it.
always enlightening and illuminating.
Right.
And thank you for coming by. Tune in next week for more conversations in the digital age. I'm Jim Zirin. Please visit our website at www.digitalage.org for conversations in the digital age. Good night and all the best.